right. Hey, 5B continued, kids. And young adults. Well, you're all young adults and kids, depending on the day. Right? So here we go. Calculate how many grams of carbon dioxide will be produced if you combust all 14 gallons of ethanol. All right? From the gas tank. Well, here we go, folks. Didn't we just convert gallons of ethanol and figure out it was something like, what was the weight? Let's change that to 42,000 grams of C2H6O. Okay. I'm going to introduce you some kind of, I like to call mole islands. Okay. Each of the reactants in an equation can be considered like a different mole island. And we can use mole ratios to get from island to island. Right? So we can figure out how many moles of this need to react with the moles of this. In this particular case, they're asking us to find the grams of CO2. And they're giving us, we start out with the grams of C2H6O, ethanol. So can we go directly from grams of this to grams of this? Not really. But if we know the moles of this, can't we find the moles of that? Well, look, it's this times, it's double. So to get from this island to that island, no problem. It's a 1-to-2 ratio. But can't we convert from grams of ethanol to moles of ethanol? Well, yeah, if you know the molar mass, no problem. So we can go from grams to mole, then moles of this to moles of CO2. But the question asks us grams of CO2. So can't we just go from moles of CO2 to grams of CO2? Absolutely. And when you're given one mass, that's always what you're going to do. Convert grams to moles, use the mole ratios, and then convert from moles to grams. So it's actually not as scary as it looks. Or, I mean, maybe it is scary, but, it can actually work out. Here we go. Let's put it all together into one big old conversion factor, because that's the way I roll. 4.2 times 10 to the 4th grams of C2H6O. All right. And let's do our conversion factors here. And then we're going to first go from grams to mole. Mole of C2H6O. All right. I'm just going to call it ethanol, ETH. And that's, if you do the math of adding the 2 carbons, the 6 hydrogens, and the 1 oxygen, you get something like 46.07 grams of ethanol per every 1 mole. Okay, so now we've converted grams of ethanol to moles of ethanol. Well, can we go from moles of ethanol to moles of CO2? CO2? Absolutely. So here we go. 1 mole of ethanol, me being lazy again, converts to give us 2 moles of CO2. Thank goodness it's a small number. Okay, good, CO2. Now we've converted from grams of ethanol to moles of ethanol, now to moles of CO2. And all we have to do, we're home free, is convert moles of CO2 to grams of CO2. So 1 mole of CO2 is how many grams per CO2? And that's one of those ones you do so much, you might remember it, 44.01. And that's going to end up giving us the grams of CO2. Well, you do the math. 4.2 times 10 to the 4th, in parentheses first, times 1 times 2 times 44.01 divided by parentheses 46.07 times 1 times 1. Good. And you're going to get something like 80,247. But wait, how many significant digits we got? We got 2. This is 4. That's a definition. That's 4. So our answer has to be in 2. So we're going to round it out to 80,000 grams of CO2. Or if you want to be really clear about the significant digits, 8.0 times 10 to the 4th grams of CO2. Which is kind of interesting because if you take a look here, since the molar masses are similar, it's basically just multiplying it by 2. So the weight of gas times 2 is the weight of the CO2. Interesting, huh? FYI.